The secret identity of a superhero is often built around wearing a mask to protect the people they love. It's an invisible wall separating the hero from their vulnerable personal life. But when you look closely at these stories, did the mask ever really keep anyone safe? Or did it become the very thing that isolated the hero, destroyed their relationships, and painted a target on the very people they were trying to protect? To understand why the mask keeps leaving so much destruction behind, we first have to stop seeing it as part of the costume, because the mask was never just something superheroes wore. It was something they built, a psychological shield forged out of trauma, designed to protect the broken person underneath. The problem is, shields have a habit of becoming prisons. If there's one movie that completely dismantles the myth of the superhero mask, it's Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. The villain wasn't really the guy with the metal arms, it was the costume, and the film opens by billing him for it. Peter's got a pizza delivery job with a 29-minute guarantee, which, let's be honest, is a job designed by someone who has never met traffic. So while working, he does what he always does. He drops everything, saves the kids, swings the pizzas across Manhattan like a man delivering a hot meal at 100 feet, and he gets fired anyway. I want you to sit with how funny and how bleak that is at the same time. This kid just saved human lives, and his boss looks him dead in the face and takes his job because the cheese got cold. There is no, "Hey, sorry I missed my shift, I was saving a life," because saying that out loud is the one thing he can never do. That's the first payment. Next, it takes Mary Jane, not in a big dramatic way, that comes later. It takes her in the most humiliating way possible, an empty chair at her play. Peter sprints, gets there, and the usher won't let him in. He stands outside a door, listening to the girl he loves do the things she dreamed about, and he can't even explain why he's late, because the explanation is the secret.
How'd you do that?
Workout?
Now watch how Raimi escalates, because this is where the movie stops being metaphor and gets medical. His powers start failing, because the stress of the double life is literally deleting his abilities from his body. And while all this is happening, the movie quietly does the cruelest thing in the whole story. It goes after Aunt May.
How dare you?
Because Peter can't hold a job, he can't help her. And because he can't help her, the bank starts foreclosing on the house he grew up in. This sweet woman was about to lose her home, and the reason is that her nephew is out saving a city that will never know his name and will never send a check. Then Doc Ock hits the bank, and Peter has to leave this elderly woman in the middle of an attack to go put on the mask, which, from her point of view, from everyone's point of view, looks exactly like a coward running away.
Oh, that boy of yours is a real hero.
The mask right here didn't just steal his time and his money, it stole his reputation as a decent person. And then comes my favorite scene in the entire film, which is just two guys talking in an office. Peter goes to a campus doctor and does the oldest trick in the book. I have a friend. My friend has these dreams.
Stop the cap.
And the doctor, who is clearly not fooled for 1 second, gives him the diagnosis that is actually the thesis of this entire video.
Gonna make you mad not to know who you are. Your soul disappears. Nothing as bad as uncertainty.
That's the whole disease. Peter isn't really losing his powers, he's losing himself. He spent so long trying to live two completely different lives that neither one feels complete anymore. Every time Peter chooses Spider-Man, Peter Parker pays the bill. Somewhere in the middle, the person underneath both identities starts disappearing.
Listen, can't you?
So let's tally the bill. He's unemployed. He's broke. His aunt is being evicted. His best friend hates him. The love of his life is marrying someone else. He is a walking, swinging, 20-year-old crater. And that's when he does the thing that made every kid in that theater in 2004 sit straight up. He walks into an alley, rolls the suit up, and drops it in the trash. Straight out of the comics. Spider-Man, no more. And for about 20 minutes of screen time, it works. His grades go up. He gets his life back, while one of my favorite songs plays in the background. It is pure, unadulterated Peter Parker bliss. Which raises the question this whole movie has been building toward. If taking the mask off feels like that, why does anyone put one on in the first place? For that, we have to go back 2 years, to the night the contract got signed. Every hero origin is a wound with a costume stapled over it. For Peter Parker, this catalyst was the loss of Uncle Ben. Watch how that scene was shot. Peter is on the ground holding his uncle's hand while strangers gather around them. And that's important. Remember that image, because we're going to come back to a crowd of strangers before the end of this video. The guilt of this inaction forces Peter to internalize his uncle's final prophetic lesson. With great power comes great responsibility. Except here's what people miss about it. In this film, it's not a superhero motto, it's a sentence, as in prison sentence.
But I didn't intentionally do anything wrong.
Peter doesn't put on the suit because he wants to be a hero. He puts it on because he thinks he owes a debt he can never finish paying. And at the end of that movie, we get the moment that dooms everything that follows. Standing at Uncle Ben's grave, Mary Jane finally tells Peter she loves him. The exact thing he has wanted since he was 6 years old is standing in front of him, saying yes. He kisses her on the cheek, tells her he'll always be her friend, and then he walks away. In the concluding voiceover, he says, "Whatever life holds in store for me, I will never forget these words. With great power comes great responsibility. This is my gift, my curse." The music swells. It's beautiful. It's iconic. And it's built on one of the biggest lies superhero stories have ever told us.
What?
If I keep my distance, she'll be safe. Remember that sentence, because if Peter Parker introduces the argument, Bruce Wayne becomes its greatest defense.
Where are you?
Here.
Bruce starts in a familiar place. A child loses his parents in an alley, grows up carrying the weight of that night, and decides no one else should ever have to suffer the same way. But where Peter Parker tries to protect his ordinary life, Bruce does something far more extreme. He buries it. When he returns to Gotham, he doesn't just become Batman, he creates an entirely different version of Bruce Wayne, a reckless billionaire who buys hotels, throws extravagant parties, and acts so shallow that no one would ever suspect he's spending his nights terrorizing Gotham's criminals. It's one of the smartest disguises in superhero history, and it's also the beginning of his downfall, because the person who sees through it first wasn't a detective. It was Rachel Dawes. Rachel grew up with Bruce. She knew the boy before the trauma, before the League of Shadows, before the cowl. But every time she looks at him now, all she sees is the performance. The arrogant billionaire disgusts her because she believes that's who Bruce has become. When Bruce tries to explain himself, insisting there's more to him than the man she's looking at, Rachel cuts straight through the act.
It's not who you are underneath. It's what you do that defines you.
At the time, she thinks she's talking to Bruce Wayne. She has no idea she's describing Batman, and that's the tragedy. The film saves that revelation for its final moments, when Bruce finally has the chance to tell Rachel the truth. Instead, she reaches up, touches his face, and quietly destroys the entire illusion. This is your mask. Your real face is the one that criminals now fear. In one sentence, Christopher Nolan completely flips one of the oldest rules in superhero storytelling. Batman isn't pretending to be Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne is pretending to be Batman. Think about what that actually means. Peter Parker's problem is that the mask is eating his life. Bruce Wayne's problem is that the mask already finished eating and there's nothing left. And that's why Rachel walks away. Not because Bruce became Batman, because in her eyes, there isn't enough of Bruce left to come back to. That's the real cost of the mask. It doesn't protect the life Bruce was trying to save, it replaces it. By the end of Batman Begins, Bruce hasn't found a way to balance two identities. One identity has completely consumed the other. The mask doesn't just hide the man beneath it, it becomes the man beneath it. Okay, deep breath. That got heavy fast. So let's do something completely different for about 90 seconds.
So, Mr. Incredible, do you have a secret identity?
Every superhero has a secret identity. I don't know a single one who doesn't. Who wants the pressure of being super all the time?
The Incredibles came out the same year as Spider-Man 2, an absolutely unhinged year for this genre. And Brad Bird looked at the exact same problem and asked the funniest possible version of the question. What if the government just made everyone stop being? And Bob Parr, a man who can bench press a locomotive, spends his days in an insurance cubicle so small it looks like a shoebox somebody put a giant in. That is one of the great visual jokes in animation. His body physically does not fit in his life. But then the movie quietly stops being funny. Because the real story isn't happening at work, it's happening at home, at the dinner table. Dash isn't allowed to run, so all that energy has nowhere to go except into pulling pranks at school. Violet can literally turn invisible, but she's already doing that without her powers, hiding behind her hair and trying not to be noticed. Bob isn't even part of the conversation. He's buried behind a newspaper, mentally somewhere in the glory days, while his family slowly falls apart over meatloaf. And then the movie pulls off something brilliant. Nobody's wearing a mask. The government took the masks, but the family is still falling apart. That's the moment this movie earns its place in this conversation, because it tells us the mask was never the real problem. The real problem was asking people to live divided lives. Whether you choose to hide who you are or someone else forces you to do it, the result is exactly the same. The people closest to you only ever get half of who you are, and half a person can't build a whole family. That's why the Parrs don't get fixed by therapy or a promotion. They get fixed by being allowed to be all of themselves, out loud, in front of each other. They stop hiding from each other. They fight together. They win together. And for the first time in the entire film, nobody has to leave a part of themselves at the front door before coming home. Now, hold that thought, because we've spent most of this video asking what the mask costs the hero. Next, we're about to go somewhere very dark and look at what happens when the mask costs the people close to our heroes. The superhero narrative frequently attempts to justify the mask's isolation by pointing to the lives it saves, maintaining the illusion that secrecy equals security. Push that rule just an inch too far, and the truth gets incredibly ugly. The mask inevitably fails, leaving the hero standing over the bodies of the very people they sacrificed their life to save. The narrative of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was heavily influenced by the climax of the first movie, where a dying Captain Stacy made Peter swear to stay away from his daughter in order to protect her from the enemies of Spider-Man. Peter's inability to maintain this vow, his refusal to accept the absolute isolation demanded by the mask, sets the stage for the genre's most devastating failure. It's important to note that the movie was very clear that this was not a character flaw. It's just what being a person is.
Nobody makes my decisions for me, all right? Nobody. This is my choice, okay?
The mask didn't protect Gwen. It just gave everybody a false sense of security, right up until the second it didn't. That's the cruelest trick the mask ever plays. It doesn't stop the tragedy. It just convinces the hero they can postpone it. But if Gwen Stacy's death demonstrates the failure of the mask to protect the innocent, Zack Snyder's Man of Steel reveals an even more horrific dynamic. The innocent dying specifically to protect the mask.
Oh, Clark, you have to keep this side of yourself a secret.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
The film explores the formative years of Clark Kent, guided by an overprotective father who believes humanity was fundamentally not ready for the revelation of an alien god. This ideology culminates in the highly controversial tornado sequence. We all know how that turned out for him, but I need you to understand what actually happened there, because people argue about this scene like it's a plot hole, and it's not. It's the darkest thesis statement in any of these films. A man gave his life in front of his son rather than let the secret get out. The mask hasn't even been made yet. There's no suit, there's no cape, there's no name, and it's already taken a life. It's not equipment at this point, it's a god, and it wants sacrifices. And Jonathan Kent walked onto the altar voluntarily to keep it fed. And the thing that gets me, the thing I think about way too often, is what that does to Clark. Because Clark learns at 17 that the price of his anonymity is watching people he loves die while he stands there to protect the mask. That's the lesson. That's the inheritance. Stay hidden, even when it costs you everything. So what happens when a hero finally tries to take it off on purpose?
I am Daredevil.
Go back through the superhero genre and find the emotional peak of almost any of these movies. 9 times out of 10, it's someone finding out. It's the reveal. It's the mask coming off. That's not a coincidence. That's the story exhaling. Because the mask is the pressure, and the only way to release pressure is to open the valve.
You are Superman.
Oh, Lois, come on, don't be...
That's why the train scene works. Peter gets carried by strangers, with the mask gone, and instead of destroying him, they cover for him. A car full of New Yorkers looked at this exhausted kid and collectively decides, nah, we got you. And when Doc Ock comes for him, they stand between them, unarmed, for free. This right here is the counter-argument to the entire genre, sitting in the middle of a summer blockbuster in 2004. The safest thing a person can be is known, and that's why The Dark Knight hurts so much. Because when the mask cannot be removed, the narrative must resolve in absolute darkness. The Joker's entire plan is built around one ultimatum: take off the mask, or innocent people keep paying the price.
They'll hate you for it, but that's the point of Batman. He can be the outcast. He can make the choice that no one else can make.
Bruce agrees. He stood at a press conference ready to unmask, ready to eat the consequences, because he's realized the symbol isn't saving Gotham anymore, it's escalating it. And Harvey Dent stood up and says, he's the Batman. That lie was a beautiful, noble, catastrophic act, but at a cost. He loses Rachel, and Harvey becomes Two-Face. Harvey Dent was supposed to prove Gotham didn't need Batman anymore. Instead, grief turned him into the very thing he spent his life fighting.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
And at the end, they agreed to lie again. Because if Gotham learns the truth, that its White Knight also became a bad guy, everything Dent built collapses with him. Every criminal he helped lock away walks into court with a reason to challenge their conviction. The symbol meant to restore Gotham's faith becomes another reminder that even its best people can fall. So Bruce took the blame, not for something he did, but for something someone else became. Gordon narrates him into legend. He's the hero Gotham deserves, but not the one it needs right now. It's the most triumphant-sounding scene about a man losing absolutely everything ever filmed. Because look at what the mask took. Not just his girlfriend, not just his friend, not just his name. It took his reputation. He's now a hunted criminal in the city he bankrupted himself to save, and he can never explain. And the explaining is the part he's already forgotten how to do. The unmasking was right there. He reached for it, and the story slapped his hand away.
Norman?
So by now you might be thinking there's an obvious solution to all of this. If the mask is the problem, why not just take it off? Well, that's exactly what the MCU tried. The final scene of the first Iron Man movie didn't just launch a franchise, it quietly rewrote one of the oldest rules in superhero storytelling. Phil Coulson handed Tony Stark a stack of cue cards, complete with the usual cover story. Deny everything. Protect your identity. Tony gets halfway through the speech, then he throws the cards away.
I am Iron Man.
4 words. And just like that, 60 years of superhero tradition disappeared. At first, it looked like he won the argument. Everyone knows who Iron Man is, because Iron Man is Tony Stark. The psychological burden that haunted Batman and Spider-Man simply isn't there. Except, the bill still arrives. It just shows up somewhere else. In Iron Man 3, Tony does something Bruce Wayne or Peter Parker never could. He goes on national television, looks at the Temu version of the 10 rings in the eye, and gives out his home address. A few hours later, missiles are crashing through his living room. He almost lost Pepper, and was left drifting unconscious in the ocean beneath the wreckage of everything he built. But what happens when the whole world knows who you are? What happens when there is no secret identity to protect? See, Peter spent his life trying to keep danger away from his front door. Tony put his front door on the evening news. That's the trade. He never has to hide who he is, but neither do his enemies. But the mask doesn't care if your identity is public.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Let me tell you
We don't care.
The mask is a sickness. That's the genius of Marvel's experiment. Taking off the mask doesn't erase the cost of being a superhero. It only changes where that cost lands. Tony Stark refuses to live 2 separate lives, but he also never gets to leave Iron Man behind. Every battle becomes personal, because every enemy knows exactly where to find him. Secret identity. You lose your life slowly. Public identity. You lose it all at once. Nobody gets out clean. Different choices, same bill. Because the tragedy was never the mask. the tragedy was always the price of becoming the hero. Which brings us to the film that puts a kid on both sides of that trade in the same 2.5 hours. No Way Home starts where Spider-Man 2 ends, with the mask off. Except this time, it's not a train car full of kind strangers. It's the whole planet. And the aftermath was the loss of everything and the rejection from MIT for both Peter and his friends. Not because of anything they did, because of who they stood next to. That's what makes this film such a good closing argument for this video. It took away the mask and shows you the other failure mode. Everyone in your orbit gets flattened by association. So Peter does what any teenager with a wizard's phone number would do. He asks Dr. Strange to make everyone forget. You know how that goes. The spell cracks, the multiverse leaks, and in the middle of that mess, in a wrecked apartment, the Green Goblin hits Aunt May with the glider, and she uses her last breaths to give him the line, "Great power, great responsibility." The same words Uncle Ben said in 2002. 20 years of movies, 3 Peter Parkers, and the sentence comes back around like a debt collector, and he loses his aunt with his identity fully public, which means the movie has now resulted in the loss of people on both sides of the argument. So Peter makes the only move left. He asks Strange to cast the spell all the way. Not make the world forget I'm Spider-Man. Make the world forget Peter Parker exists. He buys the mask back. And then the scene that should be taught in film schools. Weeks later, at a coffee shop, after seeing MJ and Ned, realizing that his presence will only ever bring them danger, he voluntarily accepts the absolute isolation of the mask to guarantee their safety, to remain all alone. The mask has consumed our Spidey. The cost has been paid, and the isolation is complete. So as we wrap up, my argument was that the mask doesn't protect anybody, and here's the evidence log. It cost Peter Parker his job, his rent, his aunt's house, his friendship, and the girl, twice, in 2 different universes, using 2 completely different methods. It cost Bruce Wayne so much that when Rachel went looking for him, she couldn't find a person, only a performance. We lost Gwen Stacy, Jonathan Kent, Foggy Nelson, Rachel, Aunt May from the other direction, just to prove the exit door is also a trap. And one of the guys who genuinely beat it, who took it off in front of the world and never looked back, paid for it. But pointing out the failure of the mask isn't enough. If the mask doesn't work, what does? Well, these movies also gave us the answer too. It's in the dinner table scene where the Pars finally stop pretending. It's in the moment Mary Jane finds out and shows up at that terrible apartment anyway, in a wedding dress, having chosen the danger with her eyes open. And most of all, it's on that train full of strangers who had every reason to walk away. People who owed him absolutely nothing looked at an unconscious kid with no mask on and formed a wall. The costume never did that. The lie never did that. Being seen did that.
If I were Iron Man, I'd have this girlfriend who knew my true identity. She'd be a wreck. She'd always be worrying that I was going to die, yet so proud. The man I'd become should be...
So the verdict is this. The mask never protected anyone in the entire history of the superhero genre. What protected people, every single time, was somebody knowing the truth and choosing to stay anyway. Which leaves one question, and I'm handing it to you because it's yours now. Drop your takes and tell me which movie made the case for you, or if you have a counter-argument. I'll read them and argue back. Maybe some of you will change my mind. And honestly, that's the whole point of this channel. Thanks for watching.